Good morning. Wow, that was, if that doesn't tug your heartstrings, I mean, we could all just go home. Thank you, Brian and Brian, for that, for introducing us to that awesome organization. My name is Meggan Huntoon, and I am the pastor of Connection and Community. I've been on staff here for about 10, 11 years, and love what I get to do and be a part of here. And I'm excited to share with you the next message in our series of Unwrapped, which is enjoying God's gifts in every season. So that's what we are unwrapping. And Brian last week unwrapped the gift of God's word. And the week before, Jean unwrapped the gift of creation. So all this unwrapping kind of got me thinking about Christmas, and it's in a little over a week. And in the spirit of unwrapping, let's take a look at this video.
Seriously, Santa Claus, I'm a little girl.
What is it?
Oh no, this is hopeless. Oh, it's not a bite. Oh man! Don't tell me it's an origami book.
It is.
I can't do origami. It is. It is. Don't you love it? I love it. I'm breaking it out. Stop for me.
No way!
Is that what you wanted?
A fox for me! I got a Kindle! I got a box! I got a Kindle! I got a box!
What's in there? Open it up, bring out. What's in it? Yeah, pajamas! Yeah!
I love these. I don't want a bicycle. I want lipstick. I got pickles for Christmas.
You got pickles for Christmas!
Nice one, Santa. Whoa! Look at all the presents.
What do you say?
Thank you, Santa. Mwah. Thank you, Santa Claus. Thank you.
Well, hopefully we can be that excited about unwrapping these gifts that we are being given in this message in this series. I had to show that video because I'm not really that funny of a person, actually. We have, I'm surrounded by these guys who are up here like Gene, whose superpower is like props and songs that he brings up here. And Brian's got this superpower of engaging stories and teaching. And Aaron's got the superpower of being a stand-up comedian and keeping us all entertained. And so my superpower is ripping off other people's things to add humor. So I'm glad that you enjoyed the video. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. On Monday, my son was going to school on his bike, and he was crossing over an intersection, a pretty big intersection near our house, and he was doing the right thing. He was crossing at a green crosswalk sign with actually a group of 7 kids all together, and a guy came through the left-hand turn on a yellow blinking left turn light and hit my son. And thankfully, because I'm up here and smiling, my son walked away miraculously with just bruises and bumps and some road rash, and is altogether actually fine and doing well. So the scene was, though, that I pulled up on was fire trucks and cops and basically a mother's worst nightmare. And so while I was at the intersection and they were checking my son out, I had at least 10 friends and neighbors driving by, stopping, like rolling down their window, is everything okay? We live in a very tight-knit community where people are kind of really connected and known, and so I just felt immediately very supported. The word spread very quickly, and within minutes I was getting texts from teachers at the school who had heard as kids were getting to school, and kind of people from all over the place, and it was really incredible the amount of support I really felt. But it went beyond just the support and the care, and it went into action. Within the first hour of this happening, my neighbors were emailing city officials and school district officials and trying to get change to take place at this intersection because it's a pretty dangerous intersection. And my son's actually the fourth child that has gotten hit, and thankfully not seriously injured, but in the last couple years. So by Tuesday evening, 9 neighbors had rallied to go to city council, and we stood all together as a group of people just basically pleading for them to change and to do something different with this stoplight to make it safer for all our kids. We also organized crossing guards with our parent community. So now in the morning and in the evening, after school, one of us is standing out there with a orange vest and a stop sign, much to the dismay of our 7th grade boys, to get them across the street safely. So it really has been incredible and inspiring to see the love and the support and movement of my community around me. And it's one thing to care, and it's another thing to act, but it's really another thing to get your hands dirty with people. And so I tell you that story because today we are unwrapping my very favorite gift, which is the gift of community. There are so many benefits to community, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. Community is not just a good idea. It's essential to our well-being. We were created to need each other. The first time that God says that something is not good is after he creates the first being in his image. Adam, the first human, was made in God's image, and what does God say? He says, "It is not good for man to be alone." The first thing in all creation that God declares is not good is for a human being alone. We need human connection. Author, researcher, and professor Brene Brown shares this quote with us. "A deep sense of love and belonging is an irresistible need of all people. We're biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, to be loved, and to belong. When those needs are not met, we don't function as we were meant to. We break, we fall apart, we numb, we ache, we hurt others, and we get sick." God gave us the gift of community to thrive as people. It is the antidote for the epidemic of loneliness that is plaguing our community, our culture and our society. We are lacking the deep human connection that we were made for, and it is literally killing us. In our abundance and prosperity in our culture, something still is just not right. A few weeks ago, Brian shared an illustration about the power we possess in culture that allows us to build lives apart from meaningful relationships. It's a paradox that we can be known, like on social media, but actually not known at all. This culture and society being the most connected and most powerful we have ever been, we are also still the most lonely. Because of this power, we can do everything that we need to do without other people. I can go get groceries without other people. I can get all the things on Amazon, which I'm sure all of us are appreciating right now at Christmas time. And if you are looking for a date, you can even find a date without going outside of your house and meeting other people. In the past, community was built on a culture that needed each other to survive. We have bought the lie that we can build meaningful lives apart from meaningful relationships, that the convenience of being connected in these superficial kind of ways is going to actually meet the need and fill the void that we have for meaningful relationships, and it's just not true. I could have picked a lot of passages to illustrate this from God's word. God was a community from the very beginning, and we see it all throughout the Bible. But what I picked was Acts 2, which is when the birth of the church, when the church first began, and we see what God was doing at the very beginning of the church when it was in its most pure form. So I'll start reading from Acts 2, 42 through 47. "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had a need. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. From this passage, we see that the gift of community starts with understanding that the church is a people, not a building, not a place, which I love what that kid said in that video before. He set me up well, which I didn't even know. We often think that when we hear the word church, we often imagine a building. So when you picture, if somebody just says to you the word church, your image in your head might involve a cross, it might involve a steeple, but normally for most people, it will involve some sort of picture of a building. But whatever your image, we see in the Bible that church is not a building. The word church never refers to a building. It always refers to people, even specifically a called out people. The origin of God calling out and working through a specific group of people started in the Old Testament when God called the nation of Israel. He called them out from among the other nations and chose Israel to be the people through whom he would bring the Messiah. God confirmed again and again that the Israelites were a special and a holy people. The primary Hebrew word used to designate the people of Israel, the community of Israel, is the word kahal. I'm trying, Jean. Kahal, which is translated a gathering of people in Israel, of Israel. Yes, a gathering of the people of Israel. So kahal is translated, when the Bible got translated then into Greek, kahal got translated into the Greek word ecclesia, which ecclesia is the word that refers to the gathering of the church. And it is used 100 times in the New Testament and always refers to the called out people of God. It is never about a building. So there is a long story involved in history as to how the church became known more for a building than a people, which I'm not going to go into today. But the impact of realizing that the church is a people is simple but yet profound. Biblically, we don't go to church, we are the church. Shifting that paradigm is actually a very important aspect of community life. It makes a difference in how we show up in our community. If I go to church, I am there to get something. I'm expecting someone to do something for me. I'm a consumer of goods and services. If I am the church, I'm a vital part of it. I belong. I share responsibility. I am showing up ready to give and do my part of caring for the people here. I have a purpose. If I go to church, it's a task. I'm checking a box. It's a compartmentalized part of my life. If I am the church, it's a lifestyle and a purpose and an identity that transcends all of my life. If I go to church, it's an event. I can choose to go or I can choose to not go. I can choose to just attend and be a part of an audience. I'm not invested. If I am the church, it's about relationships. We are committed to one another. We are journeying through life together, through marriage, through grief, through loss, through celebrations, hard times, through raising teenagers and job changes. The experience here on Sunday morning is a wonderful experience, but it's only part of the experience. The church is the relationships, and the primary activity of the church is to love and to care for one another. Since the church is not a building but a people, it's not built with materials such as brick or concrete or wood, but with the gifts of forgiveness and acceptance and care and encouragement. You can see some of the other materials that the church is built with on the screen behind me, of how we care for one another. From the Acts passage, we see many other gifts and benefits of living in community and being in community with each other. We get to experience growth and transformation in our faith and our relationship with Jesus. We get to be known and we get to be loved and have meaningful relationship. We get to practice caring for each other's practical needs. And as a result, people experience God's love and grace. I could really spend the whole message and then some talking about the benefits of being a part of a community. Community really is one of God's greatest gifts of grace to us. But instead, this series is more about how we enjoy the gifts of community. it can actually be a lot harder than we think to enjoy the gift of community. There are a lot of cultural challenges that keep us from enjoying the gift of community, from engaging with one another. We're going to look at 3 shifts that need to happen for us to really experience the benefits of community. The 3 shifts are from busy to available, from closed to vulnerable, and from consumer to family. We all know what it's like to be busy. Every second of every day is generally packed full, and I'm so busy is the common response that we give and receive when we are asking the question, how are you? Smartphones and technology have not lived up to the promise to make our lives simpler, easier, and faster. Instead, they've actually added to the complexity by blurring more of the lines of work and family and leisure. We are so busy that we're spending less time together, which is contributing to the epidemic of loneliness. We are busy with good things. I know what it's like to be busy with good things. I'm a mom of 2 school-age boys who are involved in football, piano, gymnastics, track. They have homework, they have friends, they need rides places, they have birthday parties, they have school events. I have a husband who's a traveling salesman, and I work full-time here. My son's involved in Young Life, and he's involved in the Cornerstone Student Ministry. We have a household to run and meals to get and schedules to coordinate, and we know what it's like to be busy. But we cannot let busyness cause us to lose sight of what we desperately need and were created for, which is community. In Acts, we see that they met every day. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. Now, there's a cultural aspect at play that will not probably allow us to meet every day unless you live together, which is, helpful. But in our modern culture, that's not exactly the same kind of possibility, but the principle is the same, which is they established regular rhythms to be together. They ate together. They invested in their relationships by being together on a regular, consistent basis. They prayed together. They learned from the scriptures, and they learned from one another. This is about scheduling. It's about regular rhythms in our schedule, carving out the space to make it happen, and it's about consistency of seeing each other. We need regular encouragement. We need to be available to listen and be listened to. We need to be able to care and be cared for. We need to be reminded that we are not alone. What happens on Sundays here is a very important part of our community life and our rhythm of community here. But it does not give us space to develop meaningful relationships that we so desperately need. That needs to be done face to face. And it's not going to be done by looking at the back of each other's heads. It does take work, and it takes sacrifice to make ourselves available. Our life group up in Longmont was struggling we met for a couple years, and then we were sort of struggling with how to keep meeting. Things were sort of falling apart a little. People's schedules were busy. We were trying to do meals and childcare, and people were trying to host, and lots of kids were around, and it made it just challenging and difficult. So instead of not meeting, instead of stopping meeting, we decided to get creative and sort of think through what would work for us to meet. So we have shifted our life group to meet separately as men and women. And it works for us. It works because now someone's available to take the kids where they need to be. One of the parents is available. And it works to actually, in all of our craziness right now, not have it on our plates to be providing a dinner and trying to have all the kids together for childcare. That just was creating problems. It was creating hurdles. So instead of letting those hurdles cause us to stop, we just changed. We got creative and shifted. And the men meet now on Mondays at 6 a.m. If you live in Longmont, let me know. I'd love to hook you up. And the women meet on every other Thursday at 6:30. And we have all experienced such a neat gift of community in such a different way in the way we've shifted around our rhythms. The women have got to know each other better. The men have gotten to know each other better. And we're all enjoying this new dynamic that we wouldn't have really known if we had allowed ourselves to just say, it's not working. I'm also a part of a momhood group. We've been meeting together for 9 years. We started meeting when our kids were babies, and we desperately needed adult interaction and connection and mentoring. We were just trying to figure out what we were doing at that stage of life, and wanting and being together was such a significant part of that. We met in the evenings twice a month, starting off when we started meeting and our kids were home with the husbands. And then as the years have gone on, our kids are now in school full time, and so we meet during the day, so we've shifted that. But we haven't stopped meeting. We started off meeting, reading books about parenting and having lots and lots of parenting discussions about tantrums and potty training and how do I make them stop sucking their thumb and, all the things that are hard as moms of young kids. And we've now moved into the conversations of how do I help control my kids' social media time, and how do I get them connected to a good group of friends, and all the things that you start dealing with when you have teenagers. We met on Friday, and we laughed, and we cried, and we shared honestly. We shared about parenting, we shared about marriage, we shared about hard family dynamics. We shared about the challenges one mom is having as she is a foster mom of babies that she's had for a year and a half that she is going to be saying goodbye to, and the grief that she's experiencing. We asked hard questions, we listened, we cared, and we encouraged with God's word. It is always a challenge to make community happen, but if we do, we experience life-giving and life-changing community. We need to do what it takes. We need to maybe change what it looks like in certain seasons, maybe shuffle that around a little bit so that we're, flexible and figure it out how it works. It might look unconventional, but to enjoy the gift of community, we have to shift from being busy to available. The next shift we're going to look at is from closed to vulnerable. And that shift is probably making everybody shift in their seats a little bit too. The reason that most people are closed off is because of hurt, because of judgment, because of betrayal, because of disappointment or rejection. And all those are very valid, very legitimate things. We're afraid to ask for help. We are afraid to show need because we don't want to seem weak or inadequate or unworthy of love. We are fed the lie that in our self-sufficient culture, we will be happier if we are self-protecting or if we are focusing on pursuing our own personal pursuits and identities. In the Acts passage, going back to that, we see that they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. The state of their heart is described as sincere. The definition of sincere is free from pretense or deceit, genuine, honest, and pure. Brené Brown uses the term wholehearted to describe a person who's living a sincere, vulnerable life. She says it takes courage to be sincere. It takes courage to be vulnerable. She describes a wholehearted person as a person who has the courage to tell the story of who they are with their whole heart, to have the courage to let the whole truth, including their imperfections, be known to others. In order for connection to happen, we have to let ourselves be seen, really seen. Brené Brown says that vulnerability is the birthplace of joy, creativity, belonging, and love. It takes courage to be vulnerable, and it also takes courage to be the kind of person who creates an environment for someone else to be vulnerable, for other people to be safe with you, to be a person who's willing to admit weakness, to give people room to struggle, to listen and express empathy without judgment. The cool thing about vulnerability is that it's contagious. Every time you are vulnerable, you give a person permission to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable, we can be the one who goes first. There is power in knowing that we are not alone. There is power in knowing that other people are with us in the struggle, but for that to happen, we have to make ourselves known. If somebody's going to know about us and what's going on in our lives, we actually are going to have to tell them. We're going to have to share our life with them. I have a friend from Cornerstone who was struggling with one of her kids, and she was actually really ashamed about what was going on, and she didn't want to share it with people. When she finally opened up to others, things all changed for her. And I asked her if she'd share this, and I just have a thing I'm going to read from her. She said, "Being vulnerable has been a blessing. I'm lifted up by the prayers and encouragement of my friends who urge me to keep going even when things are tough, and I feel so inadequate. On more than one occasion, when I'm sharing something I'm embarrassed or ashamed of, a friend has said to me, 'Me too,' which makes me think that if only we had trusted each other earlier, this road wouldn't have been so lonely. I hope that my vulnerability encourages others to be vulnerable too, that it's okay to not have it all together and to trust each other with the big and the small things. To really enjoy the gift of community and to benefit the most from it, we need to shift from being closed to being vulnerable." And the last shift that needs to take place is shifting from being a consumer to being family. We are surrounded by consumerism. Every second of every day, we have it flashing in our face that we have a choice that we can make about most things. Everything is tailor-made to us. It's all about me. We have iPhones. We have iGadgets. To exist in a westernized world, we must navigate the daunting array of products and services that are constantly being marketed to every want and need and desire. We are on the receiving end of infinite commercials and campaign ads and target-driven media, which elevates this idea of entitlement. This shapes us. It trickles into every part of our lives, including how we are with our church community. As consumers, we can just kind of come and take. We can critique. We can just be mad when it's not our way. And that disappointment can often even lead to people eventually just leaving church altogether and saying church isn't for them, not meeting my needs. This actually has become somewhat of a wrong model that we see happening in church, which is that a few people do all the work, or that there's experts that do all the work and everybody else can kind of just come and take. But if we see the church not as a service and a good to consume, but we see it as family, it's about relationships. Family is greater than our personal preferences, and consumerism does not work in families. We see the language of family from creation, from the very beginning of all time. Family existed. God exists in family. It is used all throughout the Bible, and in the New Testament, the word brother is used over 100 times, and the word father is actually used about 400 times. In Hebrews 13:1, it says, "Keep loving one another as brothers and sisters." The church is referred to over and over and over again as family. What would happen if we walked into our families and just demanded that we got what we wanted? Kids do this all the time. We know that. But as you grow, as your brain develops, as you move out of adolescence and into adulthood, we realize that being part of a family is sacrificing some of our desires for the sake of the whole. Family is about receiving love, but it's also about giving love. It will not work if it doesn't go both ways. It is about walking into our home, our family here, and not being about us. In Acts, we see that they sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had a need. This is how family relates to each other. We see that they treated each other as family, that the culture of the church is built on this idea that we are family. Community isn't about what we gain, just about what we gain, but it's about what we give. You have something to add. You have value. You are a valuable part here. We can easily believe the lie that we are not enough, that somebody else will do it, that I don't need to offer what I have to my family. But family contributes. Family doesn't just wait for other people to do it. A gal here, Tracy Brown, that a lot of you know, had been coming to Cornerstone for many years, and about a year ago had pretty much decided that she was going to stop coming. Cornerstone was not what she wanted. There were things she was super frustrated about. She just felt just annoyed a lot of different things that were her preferences that she did not see happening. One day here in worship, the Holy Spirit spoke to her, and, quote, this is what he said to her. This is your church. You can no longer speak negatively of it. The wave of the Spirit is coming, and you need to pray it in. So the very next week, Tracy showed up here on a Sunday morning at 7 a.m., and she has come every Sunday at 7 a.m. since to pray. She spends from 7 to 9 a.m. with a team of people who she's rallied to join her here in this room, praying for you. They pray over every seat in this room. They pray over all the things that God is doing. They pray whatever God leads them to pray. So at first, Tracy was kind of just doing that out of obedience. And then after a few weeks, her heart started to change, and her posture went from disdain to delight. Her heart turned from annoyance into joy because she was coming to love and to serve her family. We are going to enjoy the gift of community the absolute most when we shift from seeing it as consumers to seeing it as family. Here at Cornerstone, we have a lot of environments that we really create and set up to intentionally give you meaningful places to connect. We have life groups that meet 2 to 4 times a month in people's homes. Some could be over a meal, some have childcare. They are for every age, stage, demographic in life. Our life group has, just our women's group that meets, we have a single gal who's in her 20s, all the way up to an empty nester who is, in her 50s, and everywhere in between. We learn so much from each other. Life groups are built around friendship. They are built around conversations of faith. They are built around the Bible, around hearts connecting, around prayer. I'd love for even you to start a life group if you want to start a life group. We have plenty that you can join. I'd love to talk with you about that, and they're on our website. And there's a card out in the info center, but we have a lot of groups you can join, but you can also start your own. My husband and I actually even started a group in our neighborhood this year for families in our neighborhood to meet twice a month together and do the same thing as we do in life groups here, so that we could be a support to each other and be family to each other. We have women's groups that meet here every Tuesday morning and every Wednesday evening, and the Tuesday morning group has childcare. These groups, this women's Bible study breaks into groups of 10 to 12 women who get together and learn from each other, who get to learn from people in all different ages and stages of life, who get to pray together and gain encouragement from one another as we study the Bible together. We have new groups that are forming for men called men's fire groups. This is kind of an organic group where you gather 4 to 6 guys, and the idea is to meet once every 4 to 6 weeks for maybe like a longer period of time, like a 3 to 4 hour chunk of time around a fire, where you are talking and asking each other intentional questions about life, to know what's really going on with each other. We have momhood groups that meet with about 5 to 10 moms twice a month, focused on friendship and support in raising our kids. We have a group called 1825 for anybody in that 18 to 25 age range who is looking for connection and community. They meet every other Thursday evening here at the church, and they do a lot of social events together. You can even find community in our serving teams, our children and family ministry serving teams together, and our student ministries. That is actually one of the strongest communities here at Cornerstone, is our student ministries leadership, who give of their time and their energy to serve and care for our students here. And they have a really neat community and connection among them. We're building teams of people to serve with our justice and mercy ministries. We have a ministry called Living Bolder for anybody who's 55 plus and wants to connect with that demographic. Or you can even start your own. When we moved here about 12 years ago, I came to Cornerstone and wanted to really connect with the moms of young kids here. I had a 1-year-old and wanted to get to know people. So I started a playgroup, and that playgroup met every other week for 10 years. And it was it was something we all looked forward to every week, to know that we were going to see each other and connect with each other, and our kids were going to get to play. And it was just going to be a chance for us to kind of banter about life and momhood and help each other and support each other and to laugh together. So you can even start your own type of group. Also, this gathering's important. Every Sunday, people come in here wondering if they are going to be seen and wonder if they are going to be noticed. We as a church can make that happen. We can see people and we can notice people. There are a lot of stories of people staying because someone saw and noticed them. Another tool that we are using to build deep and meaningful relationships is called 1, 2, 3, 4. I have a card right here. It's up on the screen, and I have a bunch of these cards down here. I'd love for you to take one after the service. But what this gives you is a simple guide to friendships that connect us with God and others. And the idea is that you meet with one person twice a month over coffee or a walk or whatever it looks like for you. And you meet for 3 months, kind of trying to get an idea of like, is this working for us and what do we need to shift? And then you can kind of keep meeting or decide it's not and change gears. And you ask each other 4 questions. And there's a whole list of questions on the back that are questions about your relationship with God, your relationship with others, and just how you're doing with all of those things. And the idea is to build deep relationships around things that matter. This is actually the framework that Jesus taught us. He showed us how to invest in deep, meaningful relationships in this kind of way. This guide here is for you because this can be hard and it can sometimes be uncomfortable to do something like that. And so it's here to help you. And it's also here to show you that you can do this, that this is something we all can do. It is not just for you to wait for somebody to do it for you. So think of a person in your life that you could ask to start meeting with you in one of these kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 relationships. We can enjoy one another in this way because this is how Jesus loves us. He became flesh in the incarnation, which we are celebrating here in this Advent Christmas season. He became flesh and made himself available to us. He tore the veil between us and God to bring us to God. He let himself be fully known. And he also brought us into his family. In 1 John, it says, see what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And as children of God in this family together, we can love each other in the way that Jesus loved us, in making ourselves available and vulnerable and family to one another. What shift do you need to make to move from being busy to available? Do you need to reprioritize your schedule to include more time with community? I have a feeling for a lot of you, a shift you might need to make is from being closed to vulnerable. You might need to risk, to trust, and maybe even to go first in your relationships. Or maybe even rolling here on Sundays is all about you. I guarantee if you show up seeing this community as family, ready to invest and ready to pour in, then and ready to add anything you can, that you will leave much more full of joy than you do any way else. Let me pray for us. Father, this is such a gift. It is such a gift to be part of your family. Thank you for adopting us as your children. Thank you for placing us in this family of Cornerstone. I pray that you would open our eyes, open our hearts, examine our hearts, that we would see where you are nudging us to shift. I pray that we would become people, even this week as we think about this, who fully embrace the gift of community. In Jesus' name, amen.
You stand and join me.